Item number 10, general items, possible deposition of 15.2 acres of city-owned property north of Northgate Park between Clark Avenue and Live Oak Boulevard. Brad.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The subject before you tonight is to discuss the disposition of 15 acres of property that the city owns, which is just north of Northridge Park, which is that park right there, and is between Clark Avenue and Live Oak Boulevard. It's exactly 15.2 acres. And we are requesting approval to initiate a 45-day request for proposals from any interested parties that might be interested in developing or regarding any potential development of this piece of property. In 1994, regarding this piece of property, the city purchased it. And at that time, the agreement, and it was the city's intent to develop a community park back in 1994. To date, the property has not been developed. It has not been dedicated for park purposes. In addition, in 2006, 4 acres right here was dedicated for a stormwater detention pond. The current general plan designation is residential. For discussion purposes as well, just want to point out that Northridge Park is 4.5 acres right here in this neighborhood. We're here tonight because in the past 6 months, the city has received a request to purchase and develop the 15.2 acres. And in order for staff to move forward and to be transparent and really just to give the city options, we think it's in the best interest of the city to go out for a request for proposal for 45 days, which would formally announce the city's interest in developing the property or potential sale of the property. The RFP would have 5 items that we'd be requesting. One would be the organization's body and experience as it relates to development, financial ability, the project proposal and potential schedule, what is the benefit to the community, and what the business terms are. Once the RFPs are received, we will be coming back before council with a recommendation and an approval process, whatever that may be at that time. I'd gladly entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. McIntyre from the council at this point in time? No questions, but I do have a speaker, Mr. John Whitman, who wishes to come and speak on item number 10.
My name is John Whiteman. I live at 900 Northridge Drive, northeast Yuba City, very proximate to the property in question. I've lived there for in excess of 25 years. And I've monitored the city's activities and plans for that region of the city since I've been a resident. First, I want to thank you for making this a public process, because when I last appeared before you on this subject, it was not intended to be a public process, so I appreciate that. The second thing is I am opposed to the alternative use of this property other than a community park, because that's what my understanding was it was acquired for. I'm not sure what the fund source was for the funds to purchase this property, but that was what the neighborhood thought it was going to be. As recently as 2 or 3 years ago, the city sponsored a number of workshops in the neighborhood soliciting input for prospective uses for the development of that property as a community park. To my knowledge, there has been no change in that view in the people's, in the neighborhoods and possibly the community view of what that property was going to be used for. I know I've kind of monitor what goes on in the community at large and the neighborhood as well, and I was a little surprised when this matter first came up. So I'm happy that you're having a public process. I am opposed to the disposition of the property and use for other than a community park. At that point, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Anyone else? If you can fill out a speaker card with your name and address on it, please.
I'll do that.
Perfect.
First.
Okay.
My name is Ron Ernie. I am the president of the Board of Trustees for the Twin Rivers Charter School. And we approached the city about, over 6 months ago with a proposal for this property, not the whole thing. And without getting into all the details, our idea at the time was to build a school to replace one we're in, running out of room, and then build a park on the remainder for free to the city. I understand what the process is that Brad has brought before you, and I only have two things that I would like for you to consider. One is that one of the options that was spoken to in your salary report is that the RFP process would be open to nonprofit groups only. And we are a nonprofit group, and so we're obviously interested. We'd like to have that restricted to nonprofits. Secondly, the RFP timeline is 45 days, and while 2 weeks seems like an awful little to be worried about, 2 weeks is a big deal. We have to have a school open by the opening of school in 2015, and that seems like a long ways away. It's not. So I would appreciate it if this council would allow the staff to prepare the RFP, but only have it out there on the street for 30 days for people to respond. So unless there's questions, that's all I have to offer.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much.
Question for staff. Are we required to do the 45 days, or is that just a figure that we chose to put out with the RFP?
There's a range, so whatever council wishes are.
Through the mayor, I have a question for Brad. Brad, originally, to answer the gentleman's question before earlier, what were the funds, what was the source when we purchased this land, and what was the intent?
The funds purchased the property was not a grant, wasn't any federal funding. So I believe we have the flexibility to do as we wish as it relates to any funds that purchased that property. I would gladly, if Mr. Hayes wants to correct me, that I believe so. But
And just adding to that question, is there a reason why we never built the park? We bought the land quite a while back.
I think at the end of the day, it really comes about money. We have a 4.5-acre park right there currently in that neighborhood. We also have other neighborhoods in our city that lack park space, and I think that's an issue council is going to have to possibly consider. The intent of the agreement was that when the land was purchased, that it would be a community park. But at the same time, not being here at the time, but I believe that Northridge Park was built the same year. Give you some perspective.
All right. Thank you.
Whatever, through the mayor, whatever we do, I think we can make all the parks we want, but if we don't have the money to keep the ongoing maintenance and keep them up to snuff, it would be a disaster in my mind. This Feather River Parkway that we've just taken on, and the expansion that we're going to take on, I think is going to take quite a commitment of operating money to keep going. So I'd be reluctant to approve us building a park there.
It will take, and as you've experienced, yes, the maintenance costs for the Feather River Parkway is substantial, and that is always needs to be a consideration. I think also, we do not, at the end of the day, we only have so much money to build parks currently. And with the debt service of Gaucher Aquatic Park, that's a concern that's out there. And as the city has always been fiscally responsible and conservative, the Gaucher Aquatic debt is going to fall in line with that philosophy as well.
Brad, we set a date of 45 days, and that's basically to qualify a potential buyer, and we've got these parameters set from 1 to 5, financial covenants and so forth. And I understand the gentleman from Twin Cities Charter that's mentioned that he's been working with the city for 6 months, and our reasoning for coming out now is we want to make sure that as we have this process, that it's a fair process and we're transparent, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we don't, come back to 30 days just for the fact that we're trying to be transparent, but we're not transparent because we've got a buyer that wants to buy this property. If we're going to open this thing up for once and for alls, then we need to open it up to everybody who wants to come out, because as a council, it is our job to, make sure we flush out everything to the best interest that we can, whether it's a nonprofit or it's profit. And if it is, at that point in time, that's the person we come back with, then we can bring this, thing a little bit sooner. But I definitely wouldn't recommend making this thing shorter, just to get this thing done sooner, because then we're really not transparent, then we're not doing things right and fairly. And so that's why I think from my standpoint of view, I would leave it with the recommendation the way it is.
Well, and Mayor, there'll be an additional time of what we have to do to follow the law. And roughly, there's a municipal park abandonment law back from 1939 that we need to follow, and it's a process to determine whether we want to sell that property and why we want to sell that property. And there's a time frame that goes along with that as well. So it is going to be a process, and clearly the intent here is to be transparent to all of our community members.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Was this open to all individuals, or is it limited to non-profits or not-for-profit groups?
Currently, as the staff report reads, it is open to everybody. You've had, just to give you a little history and why the decision was made, is that when Mr. Gale came before you to go through the RFP process for Fire Station 4, he put in their nonprofit, and at that time the council wanted to open it up to everybody. So instead of putting nonprofit in there, my recommendation was to open it up to everybody. But again, it is certainly within the council's discretion to do as they will.
And with that, then, is it a similar process like with Fire Station 4, where we will evaluate based upon the benefits to the community?
Yes, that's one of the 5 criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
And the zoning would still apply. I mean, just because it's a private sector, you can't just build anything. It would have to go along with the general plan.
Correct, and depending on what is decided behind council, there would just be a rezoning for that piece of property as well.
Okay.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
I would recommend moving this item forward.
Okay, got a motion?
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Brad?